Every clean room has challenges. Where do you turn for answers? Real questions from real professionals. Expert insights you can trust. All answered inside the clean room. Presented by Contec Cleanroom.
Hi, my name is Patricia Igneczi, and we're here today at INTERPHEX. So you can tell we're filming an episode of Inside the Cleanroom, but we are not inside the cleanroom. So we're here today to talk to customers and to talk to our partners about contamination control challenges. And I'm here today with Patricia. You guys may have remember her from a previous episode of Inside the Cleanroom. So Patricia, what do you normally see in terms of surfaces and where surfaces need to have the most attention when it comes to residue or disinfection and cleaning?
Yeah, so with a cleaning and disinfection program, it is natural for disinfectants to leave some residue. You're actually, by using those disinfectants on all of your surfaces, right? Your ceilings, walls, floors, all of your work surfaces, that residue can accumulate anywhere that the disinfectant is being used. However, the place that it is most noticeable is on things like your windows or your reflective surfaces, right? That thing that I should be able to see a reflection out of, or a window that I should be able to see through. Obviously, if that starts to get clouded up by a residue, it's very, very obvious.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure when people are walking through their facility and looking around, that's the most obvious place where people are going to see the residue very, very clearly, because obviously if there's an opaqueness or anything looking into another room.
Right.
So what would you do when you're walking through a facility and someone says, we've tried everything, we don't know what to do, how do we remove these residues? What would you say to them was the first step to take?
Yeah, so I think first it's really important to understand where they're coming from, right? Do they have a residue removal process in place right now? Especially with the revisions to Annex 1 talking about, needing that residue removal step. A lot of people are incorporating that. However, if you're not incorporating the right process, the right solutions, the right tools, if you're just going through the motions and let's say applying Wi-Fi or applying IPA as that rinse step for residue removal, and you're just going through doing your overlapping strokes like you would for a disinfectant application, you're not necessarily doing that residue removal process, right? You're doing the same actions for a disinfectant where you want to lay down that solution, and that's not going to be the same exact action for removal of residue.
So when you're talking about using the right tools and everything, what kind of tools would people use on windows to remove that residue?
So commonly, if you are going to just very, easily incorporate it into your program, a lot of times we see that people are using the mops that they're already using for the disinfection, right? But again, using water or IPA and just applying it to the mop. And again, going through just like another step in the cleaning and disinfection process. For surfaces that you don't need to use a mop on, however, just a use of a saturated wipe. Whether that is a dry wipe saturated with water or IPA or a pre-saturated wipe.
Okay.
Now, because again, if you are not very intentional about residue removal, if you're still going through those same basic kind of autopilot steps of how to apply a disinfectant, and you're using that same methodology for residue removal, a lot of times that's not going to be effective.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So if you were to say be talking to a customer about those tools, and what would be something that you would try? Is there a certain process that they would go through in terms of selecting the right tool?
Absolutely. So using a mop, using a wipe is perfectly acceptable, again, as long as you are intentional about how you are using that and how you are both applying that, let's say the liquid, again, water, IPA, or alternate solution. You need to make sure that you are applying that in such a way that you are resolubilizing that residue. Applying moisture to a dried residue, all it's going to do is, kind of rehydrate it a little bit, a lot, depending on what solvent you're using. But if you're not then removing that resolubilized residue, it's just going to re-dry on the surface and the residue has gone nowhere. So you want to make sure that you have that mechanical action following the application of an appropriate residue removal solution Again, a mop can be perfectly fine to follow up the saturation of the residue, the resolubilization of the residue. Take a dry mop to it. However, sometimes, I'm sure you've seen it in your house, I've seen it in mine, the streaks that you get from cleaning your window if you are just taking something like a paper towel or, again, in a clean room setting, maybe a dry wipe. So one of the tools that actually Contec has now is a window cleaning squeegee. Again, maybe you have one of these in your house for the shower doors.
I definitely do.
Yeah, that is actually a really great way to, again, you couple this with a solution to rehydrate the residue, and the squeegee does an amazing job of essentially kind of dislodging that resolubilized residue and removing it from that window surface.
Okay, so you've been here at INTERPHEX for the past 2 days talking to customers and people. So we actually have a demo area that you have been using, and it's been working great. We've been putting residue on the window so you can show people in real time how to solubilize that residue and then how to remove it using the squeegee.
Yeah.
So do you want to walk over there and show?
Let's check it out.
Perfect.
So we've got a window kind of pre-prepared here where we have a pretty common sight in a clean room, right? There is this opaque residue. Let's pretend I'm an inspector coming through your clean room and I'm walking through. You've got these wonderful view windows because, again, another recommendation is to not have people in the critical spaces, so have view windows, right?
Yep.
But then you've got this window and you've got this residue on there and it's not really easy to see through, right? It's very hazy, and again, that is a telltale sign that you don't have an adequate residue removal step. Very, very obvious, the window over here where the residue has been removed versus the residue kind of just hanging out.
And again, a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, all too common in a clean room to see this residue that's left over from the disinfectants.
Okay, so when you work with a customer and they have this residue, so they would solubilize using a cleaner solution, something that they validated for their facility, and then they would use a squeegee.
Yeah, the squeegee, in my opinion, is going to be very, very effective at providing that mechanical action. Again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you have mops on hand and that is really what you want to incorporate into the program, you can utilize a mop to do that. You just might have to go through a little bit more effort than something like a squeegee that's really going to get in there and remove that residue. The key here, though, is resolubilizing that residue, making sure that you're selecting the right solution, and then the mechanical action to remove it.
Well, we've gotten some great questions so far the last couple days, so you have been instrumental in answering those questions, and we're going to be doing a demo later.
Yeah.
So this has been just a great way to show our customers how to solubilize residues inside their clean room, how to use the right tools to clean those windows. So that's it for this episode of Inside the Clean Room from INTERPHEX. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you can take these tips inside your clean room.
Yeah.